Hello, welcome to this game review. We'll have a look at a game in which both sides could have improved upon in the opening, in the middle game, and the end game as well. We will mainly focus on the end game. But firstly, the game started with c4, quite logical, e6, knight c3, and already c6 is a bit strange. The only reason to play c6 here would be to prepare d5, but black could already play d5, so c6 doesn't make much sense. And white played g3, so I assume he wants to play this fianchetto system, which is reasonable, but there was no reason not to just take the whole center when possible. But okay, this is fine. b6 is already a bit too much, moving too many pawns and not taking the center. Bishop g2, knight f6. And here white played e3, which also doesn't make much sense considering black isn't taking the center. If possible, we should strive to take the center. For example, e4, play d4 as well, knight e2, and white already has a decent advantage because he has the whole center. e3, d5. Now black finally stakes a claim, b3. So this is some kind of systematic development by white, which is fine. And at this point, black played a move that doesn't make much sense. Firstly, this move gives up a pawn in one move, but secondly, it doesn't even threaten anything. There's no reason to move around the same piece twice in the opening. Black should have just developed by castling or playing bishop b7 or something similar. Here, white could have just taken this pawn, and he would have been quite a lot better after the pawn is captured. But instead cd was played, and here black got the chance to not lose his pawn. White recaptured with a pawn, which is sensible enough, ed, and bishop a3 is a nice move, stopping black from castling, and white in general has a big lead in development. At the moment there are 3 developed pieces against 1, and also white is threatening to castle, which will also develop 2 pieces in one move, and white will be able to open the center quite soon. Bishop b7, and here white played bishop takes e4, which is a mistake positionally because in general white has the bishop pair, so there's no reason to give up one bishop unless we get something. Also, this knight wasn't really doing much. It can become vulnerable, for example, after c4, and also without this light square bishop, white will have a lot of holes on his king side, which will be on light squares, which can potentially be used by this bishop. Here something very strange happened. Black played c5, just not recapturing the bishop, after which white can just move his bishop and be completely winning with a bishop up. But white also played strangely c4, and now black got to take the bishop, so this is a very strange exchange. Not sure what happened here, but clearly white should win if he moves the bishop. At c4, now this exchange happens. Now we get an endgame. Rook d1 makes sense, and knight c3. This does make sense to improve the knight, but it's not really clear yet where the knight should go. But it is clear that this bishop has been blocked here on c5. We should understand that this pawn is now defended twice. If needed, it will be defended another time, so this isn't really a weakness. And white can just improve the bishop with tempo, attacking this pawn, and then think what to do with the knight. Okay, king c7 happened, and this is a blunder because it allows white to improve his pieces with tempo very forcefully with knight b5, and at this point the king can't really go too far away from this knight, and white will likely win a piece. The king has to go to c8. If here, then this is even checkmate, but if here there is this fork, and after king c7 we just take the bishop, and if the king recaptures, he will lose a knight. So this small tactic involving forks and deflections wins white a whole piece. But this was missed. b4 was played, and b4 is a big blunder, firstly because it misses a winning tactic, but also because it doesn't really do much. It attacks c5, which is defended, and it weakens c4. Black plays knight e5, which is a nice move using the weakness, and white blunders with castles. Again, he should have went for this tactic, which doesn't win anything this time, but at least improves the knight to d6. After this, black could have just taken the pawn on c4 with tempo, after which he is likely to win this pawn as well, which means black has won 2 pawns in 2 moves, which gives him a winning position. But knight f3, now white is doing fine as c4 has not dropped. Here knight d5 was played, but white had the opportunity to just take a free pawn, which he missed for some reason. Now we get this endgame. King d6 is a nice move, improving the king. And here black is quite a lot better for the reason that his king is a lot better. White's king is stuck on g2. And this pawn on d5 is weak. And black also will be the first to the b file. So white has some issues to solve. f6 is a good move, restricting the bishop. a4 is a bit of a waste of time. White should have tried to gain some space on the king side, maybe with h4, h5, or instead move the bishop to a1 to take the b file. But at this point the position is quite unpleasant. Rook b8, bishop c3. And a few moves later, white becomes very passive. Black is playing very well, his rooks are very active, and black should be able to win with his passed pawn. But still white got some chances. So up until here, black is quite winning, and he should just go and take something, either take the a6 pawn, or attack this bishop and move his c pawn further. And white is having big trouble since his bishop is very bad, and this king is also dominated by this knight. But h4 was played, and this is a mistake because it allows white to gain some space for his king if he takes here. And if black takes back, this king can go to f4, and it's not that bad anymore. But h3 was played, missing the opportunity to activate the king. g5. And at this point black is still better, but the game has become quite dynamic. The h4 pawn is a bit weak, and a few moves later, here black shouldn't exchange rooks, but he does. And here white has his chances because of the weakness on a7, which white created quite a while ago, and because his knight can't really move away from this pawn. So king c2, king c4. And at this point, after knight g5, white had to find the move bishop back to f6 to exchange these pawns, and after which the game would likely end in a draw. Even though white's majority here is a bit frozen, he does have the weakness on a7, and if he takes that one, in the worst case scenario he can sacrifice his bishop for some pawns and make a draw like that. But here bishop e1 was played, which is very passive, after which black for some reason didn't take this pawn. Perhaps he was a bit scared of some discovered attack like this, but after en passant and taking here, the pawn promotes and white has to give up his bishop. So a few blunders here. Knight f3, bishop went to d2. Instead, bishop c3 would still hold a draw. But after bishop d2, black had the opportunity to win very easily by going to a pawn endgame. And we have to understand that this pawn endgame is easily winning because white cannot create a passed pawn and black already has a passed pawn. For example, king b3, and white can't really go here and here because this takes too much time. And now this pawn promotes a bit earlier than white's pawn. But this was missed. Knight g1, bishop c3. Now black takes this pawn, and here black should be able to win quite easily by either putting his knight on f3 and promoting, or even taking more pawns. But surprisingly white got chances, so bishop f6 is a nice move, exchanging pawns. Bishop h4, knight g4. And at this point black is winning, but the win is not that simple. He has to not lose the a7 pawn, and ideally he should take this pawn. So bishop g5, and here probably the simplest would be to go and take this pawn, which he does. But now knight d7, again simpler was to go here and take this pawn with a check or without a check. But knight d7, king d2, king d5, and here knight b6 is a big blunder, and it should be quite clear why. White has a forcing move in bishop b8, which attacks a pawn, and there's no one to defend this pawn apart from knight c8, which is very passive. But now after something like king b3, well, black can't really do much. If he goes here, then the king can advance, and black can never really move his knight, which makes the position sort of a fortress. But after king b3, here again the win is not entirely obvious, but it involves knight d7, firstly stopping this, and then playing king c6 and then king b6 to take this pawn. But at this point white got a chance to take this pawn, but for some reason he did not. He moved the bishop again. But after bishop a7 the draw is already very close. For example, after this the bishop moves away, and now there's only two pawns against one, and the less the pawns, the bigger the chance for a draw. After bishop c7, now black is 2 pawns up, and white goes to a pawn endgame, but in general the pawn endgame is hopeless because he is 2 pawns down. He can still play on with something like bishop b8 and hope that black blunders one of the pawns, which is still possible, but after this the position is hopeless and black can win in a variety of ways.